Hey, thanks for joining me. It's a rarity when there's new, fresh J. Scott Campbell content, and I am always excited to look at his stuff. If you watch my channel, you know how much I'm a big fan of his work. There's almost nothing he's done that isn't interesting or entertaining on some level. He's one of those artists where I paid attention to him when he first got going at Wildstorm, when he was doing the Jim Lee studio Gen 13 book. But it took me, he had to get into that book a couple of issues before I really noticed his art. And it stuck with me. And then once he kind of got going, I was on board completely. And he's done one of, in my opinion, the best comic series ever made, which is Danger Girl. And I reviewed them all, and it's kind of a bummer because I can never, review them for the first time again. But that is a series that I talk about. It's a perfect comic. It's perfectly balanced by a guy who knows exactly what he's doing and exactly how to bring forth the ideas that he wants to do, draw the things that he wants, and gives his maximum perfect effort, and it comes out brilliantly, and I absolutely love it. And it's kind of a bummer because he kind of didn't do any more comics after that. He kind of just went on to do covers. He did his the teen high school holographic enhanced kids that I just can't frickin' think of the name of, but you'll know what I'm talking about. He did it like 2 issues of that and then bailed on it for, I think it was personal reasons. I kind of heard a reason why, and I don't know. I don't want to mention it. It's none of my business. But anyway, but his art is just absolutely spectacular. He is so good at what he does. Even though it bums me out that he's one of those artists that's just top tier, perfect, great, absolutely knows exactly what he's doing, and all he does is cover art. I get it. If you can get the gig, especially at his level, I mean, I don't know what he gets paid, but it is clearly a lot. And what a great gig. You get to draw comic characters and you get to put in your best effort. You don't have to worry about sequentials, which are a pain in the ass. Page after page after page of multiple panels of storytelling and drawing all kinds of complicated shit. I mean, yeah, it's fun, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. It's just nothing but another blank page sitting in front of you waiting to be filled. But you get a cover gig. Great, it's good for him and it's good for fans that like his art, but I want to see comics. I want to see storytelling, and J. Scott Campbell's so good. Like, him and Joe Mad are kind of in the same boat with me, where it's like, you guys are absolutely geniuses, and they're like, even at this point as far as their ages and this far in their career, I'm like, in my opinion, they're still at the peak of their game with their art. Like, they haven't lost a step. Some people lose a step. They're not as dynamic as they used to be. Jim Lee. But like J. Scott Campbell and Joe Mad, they're still as good as they've ever been. And as, in my opinion, they're the best they've ever been. And I just wish that they would draw comic books. But in the spirit of being happy to get anything, I didn't even know this thing existed. I happened to be just kind of flipping through YouTube, and there is a page that I happen to have run across recently, and I'm going to show it right here because I want to shout him out right here. Kaufman is Live. I assume I'm saying that name rightly. Kaufman is Alive Comics. This gentleman's got a page where he reviews comics and stuff like that, and he showcased this book according as far as this recording right now 11 days ago, and I saw it. I'm like, well, I got to go look at that. And he did a great walkthrough of it. Like, I don't know that I could add much more interesting content or commentary to what I'm going to say as compared to what he already did, but I have to thank him for like bringing it to my attention. So go check out Kaufman is Alive Comics. Good channel. Talks about a lot of really good, relevant comic stuff. So go give him a look. But I want to shout him out because I didn't know this thing existed until I saw his video. And so I just ordered it, got to pick it up and got to, look at the content there within. It's the cover. It's a little cluttered, but this is like somebody taking all these separate images of the characters and putting them together into one big shot. And I mean, it's about as good as you could possibly get, but it's a little cluttered, but you'll see kind of what's going on when we get inside the book. But yeah, J. Scott Campbell, I like how they take his initials They call it the Just Spectacular Collection with, I'm not sure how you pronounce the name, Sabine Rich. Apparently that's a woman doing the coloring. So anyway, and there is a great interview in here with Campbell, and I thought I'd touch on some of kind of the most important elements. There is one thing in here that I don't know if it was public knowledge, but it was shocking to me, and it pisses me the fuck off. We'll get to it, but there is Mr. Campbell now, right there in a picture, and then all these individual pieces of art that he's done for this book, this stuff specifically, cover story. Now, I guess what they did is Marvel came to him and said, hey, we want to do a specific special run where you're going to draw all these characters and they're going to be covers, and then we could kind of collect them together, just kind of just focus on and spotlight him. Something that I didn't know, but then I think about it, I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, I guess that's right. It never occurred to me that J. Scott Campbell's been exclusive to Marvel for like decades now. I'm like thinking about, I'm like, has he not done, no, everything I see him do is Marvel. So I'm pretty sure he's like contractually exclusive to Marvel, which is great for him. Gives him steady work. It's shit that people really like. And let's be honest, these days Marvel needs any win that they can get. And keeping Campbell on the payroll is definitely something that seems like a good investment in a industry where Marvel is fucking sucking right now. Keep him going, keep him on the payroll, and keep him drawing art for them. But I like this shot and seeing all the original art. I love that Campbell still draws on paper with pencil and a pen. He talks about it in the interview. So there's a really nice interview here. Like I said, there's a couple of bits that I kind of wanted to touch upon a little bit. They ask him about how he got introduced to comics. And he's saying how he was a big fan of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and Incredible Hulk, the animated shows, and hearing Stan Lee's voice, do the voiceover on that. But Campbell at one point wanted to be a Disney animator. But then he runs into Arthur Adams' artwork on comic books. And he's like, that just changed his trajectory everywhere. Almost overnight. He says, I've never seen artwork like that. I guess it's X-Men Annual number 10, this one right here. And he says a couple years later, Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee took off, and that's really cemented things. But he's like, I was all about this, and Marvel Comics were at the top of my list. And then they ask him, like, you were, let's see, things moved quickly in the 1990s, not only for you, but for the entire comic book industry. By the time you were 20, Lee and McFarlane and their fellow superstar artists had formed Image Comics. Suddenly you're working with Lee, co-creating Gen 13. What was it like entering the industry right in the middle of that boom? And he's like, he talks about how amazing it was. And X-Men number 1 was this amazing book that was the biggest thing of all time. Seeing Liefeld on the Levi's TV commercial, and how Campbell was showing, like, he could point out to his parents that, like, hey, look, see, this guy's a comic artist and he's on TV. This is a place where you could make money. He says that when he got hired on at Image for Jim Lee, he said it was almost the similar situation for getting hired by Marvel in a way, because just 1 year earlier, Jim Lee had been drawing X-Men number 1 for Marvel, so it's a really close kind of connection. And then he said in here, he says, they had me doing different pieces of art for 6 months, like pinups, leading up to my first interior work on Gen 13. And the learning process I refer to as like drinking from a fire hose. I couldn't take in the information fast enough at that age. I went from being told my whole life, quote, oh, you're such a great artist. You're the best artist in the room. And suddenly I was 19 and the worst artist of everybody in the room. I really had to step my game up, and I couldn't wait to do it. I like hearing that. Most artists, especially when you're younger, you tend to be like, my experience with me personally, because I like to draw too, and I know a lot of guys, and I seem to hear this story a lot, is that people will be like, you're the artist, and everyone looks at your stuff who's not an artist, just kind of like the casual normie, just looks and sees that you can draw, and to them, you're freaking like Rembrandt. Like, you're so good, you're so incredible. The question I always get all the time is, especially when I was younger, is like, why don't you go work for Disney? That's the first thing out of people's mouths when they see you can draw. Like, for people who don't know anything, like the best thing you could do if you're a good artist is like go work for Disney. I can't tell you how many thousands of times it seems like I was asked that question as a young kid and a young adult. You should submit your work to Disney. And then as time goes on, people are like, you should be working for Marvel. You're just as good or better than the people working for them. And I was smart enough and self-aware enough to be like, no, I absolutely am not. But for people who don't know, they just automatically kind of think that you're brilliant. But it's funny to hear him mentioning how everyone tells him, like, you're the best artist here. And suddenly you get hired onto a studio with, with Jim Lee and all that crew of incredible artists that he kind of assembled. And you're like, you're the worst of the group. But he's like, I had to like start upping my game really quick. So that's great. The question continues, says, you mentioned your early artistic education was focused on animation. That influence was apparent on your work on Gen 13, putting you at the forefront of the next generation of artists like Joe Mad, who brought that animated look into American comics. And so Campbell talks about how Joe Mad brought more of the Asian anime manga approach to it, and he brought his Disney stuff, his kind of a lighthearted, cartoony vibe of like a Disney animation to his comic art. And then he says here that he says, by the time Gen 13 came out, we were already aware that things were starting to crash. They're talking about the crash of the big comics boom. And they were seeing how that peak that they did with, the X-Men, X-Force, Spider-Man, all those number ones, and then Image Comics the first year or two, eventually they could start seeing that giant comics industry bubble was going to collapse. He's like, we could start seeing that happening. He says, but in some weird way, it was like a blessing in disguise because orders were kind of low initially. That meant it was hard to find Gen 13 number one. It sold out really fast, so it became a sought after book that they had to reprint and reprint. So that's kind of an interesting take on it, things weren't great, but because it was popular and well received, it became a collector's item that creates a lot of word of mouth, which is good. Then they go on to say the second half of the 90s was a tumultuous period for the industry, but Danger Girl, the series you co-created at Image, was one of the bona fide hits of that period. And then at that same time, you began illustrating covers for Marvel. It's kind of like you followed the opposite of the Image Comics blueprint, meaning you start at Marvel and you go work for Image, but here he starts at Image and goes work for Marvel. It's interesting how he talks about here. He says, when he finished Danger Girl, he says, I was fortunate enough to have not one, but two solid hit projects, meaning obviously Gen 13 and then Danger Girl. He says, it's like when you're a musician, you never want to have that sophomore slump. Kind of makes a reference to that. He says, after two hit books, I was also kind of exhausted. Danger Girl had been a passion project, and I poured so much of myself into that I was out of gas. And I agree. Danger Girl is a perfect book from beginning to end. Like I was just mentioning, I already mentioned that once. But never once did he falter. Never once did you get into a later issue where the art suffered or handed it off to somebody else because he was tired. He did his peak work all 7 issues. It's brilliant. I love it. He says, thankfully, I had been smart enough to think of it as a mini series, like a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and something I could come back to when I wanted to. That gave me an out if I needed a break. And I thought I'd take on some cover projects just to give myself some breathing room. And my first work for Marvel was a variant to Daredevil number 2. So that's smart of him. He's like, he did construct, there's a very definitive end to Danger Girl, that issue 7. It's done, it's over, and then you can come back to it, sure. But he didn't have to be like, okay, I finished issue 7. Now I got to keep going. Just a monthly book. I have to keep making it. And he gave himself an out, which gave him some breathing room. And then he goes and does stuff for Joe Quesada, let him do a cover for Daredevil, and the Quesada did a pinup for Danger Girl. And then there is, I think it's right here. Okay, no. He talks about doing covers for Spider-Man, And then Amazing Spider-Man run with J. Michael Straczynski was just starting his run with John Romita Jr. doing the interiors, which I actually really like that run. That's a great run. I got to dig those out and start doing some Spider-Man books. I thought that stuff was pretty spectacular. And Campbell's saying, like, I don't want to step on John Romita Jr.'s toes. Like, is he okay with me doing the cover? And they're like, Romita Jr. was like, no, he's fine. He just wants to do the interiors. No big deal. But here's the thing, because he talks about how he likes Spider-Man. Like, he's known for drawing hot girls, but he loves Spider-Man. Here's the part. He says that gets me frustrated. Then in 2005, you signed an exclusive contract to draw covers for Marvel. What made the House of Ideas the right home for you at that point? He says, at the time, Jeff Loeb and I were developing a Spider-Man series, which has kind of become legendary because there was work done on this series. There are issues drawn, but for a variety of reasons, unfortunately, it did not get finished. From time to time, Marvel and I do talk about trying to figure out how to resurrect this series and get it out, but in between working on that, I was able to start doing more covers again, and that started a wave that has kind of continued to this day. What the fuck? I seem to remember talk about a Spider-Man series coming up, but he's actually drawn, he doesn't say pages, he says issues, as in plural, as in at least more than one, so at least two. J. Scott Campbell has a 20-year-old Spider-Man series that's never been released. Now, I understand they're saying it never got finished. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Sitting on a gold mine. Oh, it drives me nuts. I'm not like mad at Campbell or anything like that. I don't know what the reasons are for them not finishing it. Something obviously come up. I don't know. Who knows what it is? I don't know. But oh my God, does that piss me off to know that there's multiple issues of a Spider-Man drawn comic by J. Scott Campbell. And it's like art that's 20 years old, which is still going to be fantastic. And they can't bring themselves to finish it and put it out. Oh my God, Marvel, J. Scott Campbell fucking put it out. Give Marvel a win. Campbell, don't worry about maybe you've lost your step in your sequential storytelling. I don't think that exists. Just do it. Make the book. Oh, it just drives me nuts to know that that stuff is sitting there and it's never been released. Oh my God, drives me nuts. Anyway, and then I actually get kind of frustrated. I don't know if I give a shit about the rest of the interview. He talks about his iconic trilogy or trinity of like holy covers that got him really popular. We've all seen these, especially the one with Mary Jane sitting on the couch with Spider-Man swinging off. That's a great image. He talks about how he was his natural inclination is to draw female characters. Gen 13, Danger Girl was the big thing he's known for, but he likes to do Spider-Man. But of course, you get to draw Mary Jane and Black Cat, so that's always fun. He just talks about his kind of cover jobs that he does for Marvel and how he does them. He talked about somewhere in here, I did read this all, but how he just likes to do traditional art, draw with pencil and ink on paper, and he's kind of fiddled with digital, but it still doesn't quite look like his art to him. And he's like, maybe I'll kind of develop it, but he still likes to draw. Plus, there is original art, which he can then sell, which I'm like, especially for a guy in his position, people would snap up his art like nonstop. So of course you should do traditional art, because you not only do you get paid for the gig, but you have something physical to sell on the aftermarket. So anyway, and they talked about the characters they had to pick, and I love this shot of all the art kind of laid out there. That is awesome. It says you still work traditionally. He says, I've made several attempts to go digital, but it hasn't taken yet. He's like, there's times when he's sitting there filling in black on a figure, and he's like, if I just had that paint bucket tool or whatever, I could just fill in the black and it'd be done. Or you're erasing pencils, like, I could just turn that layer off. But he's like, people love buying original artwork, so blah, blah, blah. Anyway, talks about the colors and all kinds of the fun stuff that he's done. So anyway, let's get into the goddamn art. Sorry, guys. I didn't think I'd take 20 fucking minutes to get to the art. Probably all of you have turned this shit off. He talks about his thoughts on some of the characters on some of the pages, and on some of these you get to see the initial kind of rough sketch ideas of what version he wants to go with, and then kind of his finished pencils, his finished inks, and then the colored version, and it always looks great. And And of course, Black Cat's one of the characters that Marvel was like, if out of all these groups of characters that you have to do, you got to do Black Cat. And of course, we're going to do that. It looks good. It's not my favorite. There's some other ones in here that are just absolutely fantastic. And then, like I said, not all of them get like a breakdown of what he thought about each one. He does talk about in the interview, now that I think about it, he says he kind of had to go back and forth with what he thought was the iconic version of the costume that he wants to put the characters in. Like, when he thinks about the iconic version of Rogue, he puts her in the Jim Lee X-Men #1 costume. But when he thinks about Cyclops, he puts him in the John Byrne costume. And I was like, you know what? That makes sense. He kind of gets to choose the kind of classic, iconic version of the character that he wants to do. So they're not all from the same era, and it can all kind of go back and forth. So I think that that's neat. We'll get to see. Kind of a classic Black Panther. It's kind of interesting because he's just a guy in a black outfit, except the only thing that's kind of identifying is the mask, kind of the clawed feet. Is the clawed feet thing like that kind of a standard thing for Black Panther? I don't know if I remember that, but it's pretty obvious. One thing I did notice about the coloring on all this, and once I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it, and for some reason it kind of bothers me, and I don't know if it's because this is how J. Scott Campbell draws it or just as a colorist choice. But as we go through almost all of these, there's this rim lighting on like every character. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It looks good, but it's like just a recurring motif on almost every drawing. And I don't know, like I said, once I noticed it, which was like fast, like right here, I'm like, oh, look at that rim lighting. But then it's like, that's everything on every character just about. And I don't know why in my head, it's kind of like, why does it bother me? It doesn't look bad, but I don't know. This is just a weird Rob thing. So yeah, you got your Black Panther, you got your Black Widow, classic, awesome, kind of like 60s vibe. I love the round belt thing, like such a classic, like almost like an Emma Peel kind of thing there. Great pose, great everything. The Captain America, I dig it. He's almost got like a movie costume design with the mask. Let me bring it up close if you can see. It's like got bulky kind of like a mask, almost like a helmet and straps and a chin guard. Like it's not just a spandex thing pulled over his head, which you could do and get away with real easy. But it almost looks kind of like a movie type version where it's like a uniform, a little bit bulky. Love it. Great shield. But again, there's that rim lighting across everything there. This Carnage, I don't know if I've ever seen Campbell draw Carnage. That is really good. I think that looks so great, and the spindly, like organic goo of the symbiote costume flowing everywhere. Really neat. God, if they finished that Spider-Man book, how great would it be to get a book that's like a series they've got presumably at least 2 issues done. Let's say it has to go at least 1 more, maybe 2 more issues, but it's the same story, but it's Campbell's art from 20 years ago and then Campbell's artwork from today. What an interesting book that would make. But God, if you got Spider-Man, you got to put Venom and Carnage in there. I've said before how if Marvel wants to have a home run win, get Jim Lee back to do X-Men, do a big series of Spider-Man with J. Scott Campbell. You'll have a massive win on your hands. You have to pay him millions of dollars. Marvel probably doesn't have that money anymore. Great Carnage, though. Yeah, there's the Cyclops. He talked about in the interview, like one of his first inclinations was to put him in the Jim Lee X-Men design with the skull cap open, his hair hanging out, and the belts and straps and shit. But it's essentially the same costume minus the belts and straps. And when I think of classic Cyclops, the best version, like the one that is closest to my heart is the Jim Lee one, because that's what I grew up with as a kid. I experienced it firsthand. But this thing, I'm like, that is the best version. The best version of the X-Men is the John Byrne Claremont era stuff. And I love it. That looks great. That's the perfect costume to choose. Rim lighting everywhere. Daredevil. Almost like he's trying to be kind of sexy there. Daredevil got a little butt sticking out. Great drawing of Daredevil. It's not my favorite in the book, but it looks great. Great anatomy, great pose. Everyone kind of has like, that's another thing I like about J. Scott Campbell's art, is everything has kind of like a lighthearted kind of, like we're not talking about these characters where everything's so grim and gritty and dark and serious, like that 90s vibe where everything's, so dark and scary. These are like lighthearted, fun characters, and Marvel excels at that. I don't look at DC characters, even at their best potential versions of the classic lineup of like the JLA. I don't think of them as the same as when I think of Marvel and all their characters, kind of like a classic, lighthearted, fun group of superheroes that's just the best group of characters at any company. Doctor Doom, he says that he loves Doctor Doom so much he doesn't get to draw him very often, so every time he gets the opportunity, he's going to throw everything in. And by God, did he. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen Doctor Doom with the fucking gun strapped to his belt. And he's got a giant D for a belt buckle. Love it. I love the little furry kind of poof balls added to the top of his cape. I love the little rivets in his armor. So it looks like old school, like medieval knight armor, but he's also got armor that's rivaling the technology of Iron Man. He's also a master magician, rivaling Doctor Strange. And he carries a gun on his hip. Love the sketches, finished pencils, inks, and then the colored version. Looks great. That Doctor Doom, you could tell he like had fun with it. He literally says that up there. It looks fantastic. Speaking of Doctor Strange, there he is looking awesome. Great cape. I like how he's very skinny, kind of gangly, because not every character needs to be a big, muscular, bulky dude. And Doctor Strange works just fine like that. He talks about here how he doesn't get to draw Ghost Rider very often at all, and he doesn't usually get to draw, there's multiple versions of Ghost Rider, so which one do you get to do? And he very rarely gets to draw the motorcycle from the side. A lot of times the bike's like coming at you for a cover. So he was very happy with this one that he got to do. So there's your pencils, there's your finished inks. And God, it looks good. Let's flip over to the double page spread of everything. This might be my favorite drawing in the whole book, maybe. Johnny Blaze version. And I mean, the flames look fantastic. Ghost Rider looks perfect. And look at that motorcycle. It's almost like some artist can actually Google a motorcycle and look up reference and see how a machine actually works and looks, and then draw it and extrapolate and exaggerate and make it look awesome. I'm not talking about any artist in particular who doesn't know how to do backgrounds or vehicles or anything. You all know who I'm talking about. What a great drawing of Ghost Rider. This is contender for my favorite drawing in the entire book. And from Campbell, a guy who's known for drawing hot girls. It's like, God damn. That's why I also give, like, some artists focus on and make all their money on drawing nothing but hot chicks. But when they're an artist that can draw literally everything just as good, they're just famous for hot chicks, that's when you got like a true superstar. That's J. Scott Campbell. That is Adam Hughes. Adam Hughes is known for drawing the hot ladies, but he can do anything. And just fantastic. Looks so great. Love that so much. I am not a massive fan of Spider-Gwen. I've never really read any of the books. I wasn't there whenever the hell the character showed up. I don't know much about her. I guess the costume's pretty good. I don't dislike the character. I don't hate her or anything like that, but I have no real connection to this character. I don't give a shit. He likes her. He likes the design. He thinks the costume's really good. And so, yeah, solid drawing all the way around, of course. I don't know if this is normal, but I like how she's just got tennis shoes on. It's kind of interesting. Hulk. He talks about here how so many body types with, in Marvel. Like you got Hulk is a giant beefy guy. Spider-Man's lanky and wiry. So you can kind of draw all kinds of different body types. I mean, that's honestly every comic book company and character, group of characters. But looks fantastic. Not the best version of Hulk I've ever seen, but it's fantastic. It's great. J. Scott Campbell artwork. Looks nice and thick and solid. There you go. Johnny Storm. Great use of color. I like the smile on his face. It's a Fantastic Four. I don't want to see a grim and gritty Fantastic Four. I want to see lighthearted, fun adventure. Great Iron Man. Great tech. I like how it's kind of a bulky suit. I know that original 60s version of Iron Man, it was really kind of ridiculous, honestly. Whereas like a skin tight sheathing with a couple like bulky plates around his feet and his arms and like a belt and like metal underwear. That always looked weird to me. But this, like, obviously I'm going to say is probably inspired by the movie, which it should be, because the movies have made Iron Man like the version of the character that is actually peak Iron Man these days. Looks like a bulky suit. that's tech that's around him. It looks fantastic. Looks so good. He's killing it. Another character that I don't have a lot of emotional connection to, Ileana. This version of her, this black BDSM outfit and the giant weird manga sword and the weird black horns. When I think of Ileana Rasputin, I know that she was part of the New Mutants, and then she got reduced in age to a kid, and then she got the legacy virus and died, and that's the last I ever saw of the character when I was reading. And obviously any character that dies is always going to come back, and so I don't know anything about this character. I don't care, but it looks, it's a great drawing. I don't like these giant sword things. They bug me. Who cares what I think? Mary Jane. He talks about in the sea of all these characters with all these tough superheroes, just having regular human girl Mary Jane standing there posing kind of sexy might be kind of out of place, but she's got to be in there. He does talk about how he wanted to start adding, and he did. Let me see if I can bring it up closer, the black and white artwork. Adding freckles. See how he's got them down there on her thighs and her arms and her face. And he's like, he says in the text here that he doesn't think that Marvel, or he thought that Marvel would kind of ask him to remove it. But they're like, nope, we dig it. And it works. It's kind of one of those defining things that I don't know that I've ever seen any other artist ever do that. Add freckles to the redhead. And she looks great. Great pose. Very attractive. Very sexy without being over hypersexualized. It's just fantastic. Great Mary Jane. He's one of the definitive Mary Jane artists, in my opinion. Nova. Another character I don't know much about. Interesting design. I think it works. It looks great. Great space kind of character. Of course, Psylocke always going to be a badass. I'm a big fan of this version of her. The Jim Lee ninja version, just set aside the convoluted origin of the character. Let's just forget that. Let's just pretend that doesn't exist. Let's just have her be awesome. The great outfit, the unnecessarily weird but awesome design of the little stripy bits, her focused totality of her telepathic powers, and a sword. She's awesome. Love that. Then there we go. Classic Rogue. I mean, these, you got your classic Jim Lee designs in here, the Psylocke and the Rogue. And when I was thinking about it, I'm like, I've given Jim Lee some shit recently where I've talked about how I don't think he's not a good costume designer. And I was really shitting all over how I don't like Gambit's costume, and I 100% stand by that. But I'm like, this design, as far as I know, is all Jim Lee. And I'm like, it never occurred to me to stop and go, that outfit is awesome for some reason. The design with the yellow and the green, I love the big boots and then the leather coat, the headband. I'm like, you know what? Jim Lee kind of nailed it there. It's like, what is this besides just some kind of uniform? It's not like a costume as much a uniform, but when I think of Rogue and the classic, most iconic version of her, it's that. So I got to give Jim Lee, as far as a design sense, I got to give him Rogue. As far as I know, that's him, right? She-Hulk looks great. I like how he makes her appropriately beefy, like very thick, especially in the legs, like a big bodybuilder girl. Like, that's what she should look like. Looks great. Spider-Man. Got your Miles Morales and your Peter Parker. I'm 100% a Peter Parker supporter, fan, all the way, above any other version of Spider-Man. But the Miles Morales version has definitely earned his place, and I kind of think that drawing is the better of the two. Like, they're both great, but that one right there looks fantastic. Very cool. That's one where I think that kind of the rim lighting kind of works better for it, because he's got a dark costume that kind of helps light him up. Love it. Storm, classic costume design, kind of like the Cyclops. It's that, Dave Cockrum designed. I've said before, like, it's kind of like unnecessary skin showing, but it's just such a perfect design, with the thigh-high boots with the little circles cut out in them, the little underwear thing connected by a little loop to her upper covering on her top of her chest, and then the cape with the little jewel clasp, and the cape, how it kind of covers her shoulders, and then the big round kind of oval split cape design, and then the headdress thing she wears. There's never been a better Storm costume design ever. That is the best version of everything. It looks great. And it's interesting how they pair up these two. Like, I don't think they particularly kind of, like, not every pairing of characters meant to have some kind of meaning together. They just got to put them all in here somewhere. Thanos. That looks awesome, and it looks like straight out of the movies. Like there's been a lot of versions of Thanos that are all basically the same design, and the movie got it almost flawlessly perfect correct. And that looks like the movie version, and I like it. Big, thick, tall, the grimace, the little nutsack chin, the infinity gauntlet. Like it looks great. Great Thanos drawing. Thor is kind of fine. Classic like 60s version with a weird little glowing disc headlights on him. The weird little stripy design on the boots. Like it's classic. It looks great. But standing next to that Venom, holy shit, does that Venom just steal the show? That looks so good. Again, the rim lighting with the dark costume, I think works really well. It almost looks like he's in a nighttime setting and there's a car behind him and his headlights are illuminating the body. Love the symbiote oozing off him, kind of like the Carnage one. Honestly, I feel like they should have put Carnage on the same page as Venom. Who was Carnage standing next to? Oh yeah, Captain America. Put Thor and Captain America together for fuck's sake. And then put, unless it's supposed to be, no, I was like, is it a hero villain thing? No, they should have put Thor next to Captain America and Carnage right next to Venom. Oh, what do I know? I don't know shit. Venom looks awesome. Badass. Another character I don't have much of a emotional connection to, don't really give a shit about, didn't ever really read the stories, don't know anything about her beyond the most basics. But the, X-23, Laura, it's a great drawing, of course. Good stuff. And then, unfortunately, the seam on the book is it's offset, so Wolverine's split right down the face, and it's kind of fucked up. But, Wolverine's like classic, like Mount Rushmore of Marvel comic characters. It's kind of weird because it's certainly a great drawing of Wolverine, but it's kind of one of the lesser drawings in this book. It's fine, but it's not my favorite. But Wolverine, he's awesome. Put him in the brown and tan costume, for fuck's sake, guys. And then there is kind of like the mishmash shot of all the characters together. I'm trying to decide what image I want to use for the thumbnail for this book. Probably going to be this, but we'll see. But that right there, if they were to make a poster of this, and I would like to think that they would, I would buy that shit and put it on my wall like I did when I was a teenager. I had a bunch of art posters on my wall as a teenager, and I would put this shit up right now. I think it looks fantastic. That is awesome. Great. There's a reason that Campbell is just a super badass. And then there's, because he obviously takes images of the penciled work before he inks them, and then they kind of get in Photoshop and kind of mash the characters together in pencil. Love this stuff. I wish there was a black and white version of this. Put the pencils and the inks together side by side, and I would be the happiest guy ever. But you know me, I'm always that way. Fantastic stuff. So that's it. So it's just kind of a honoring and spotlighting J. Scott Campbell from Marvel. Great idea. Thank you. J. Scott Campbell, I watch interviews with him. There's stuff where he's promoting things. He does interviews. He seems like such a good dude. Like a really kind of lighthearted, fun guy that appreciates his job, appreciates the work he's given, appreciates his fans. Just seems like a good dude. And I always appreciate that. I mean, sometimes you hear how certain people are dickheads and like, well, I could still appreciate their work, but it's a lot funner and it's a lot easier if the person seems to be like a good human being too. So, God, I would die. I'm sitting here thinking in my head, like I was watching an interview where he was on some YouTube channel and just doing an interview. I'm like, oh God, how awesome would it be to be able to talk to J. Scott Campbell on my channel? I don't know if that would ever, maybe I can manifest that. If I just put it out there in the universe, maybe it'll just happen. Yeah. And monkeys might fly out of my butt. Great book. It's basically just a pinup book. That's fine. I'm actually fine with that. He's such a great artist. So that's all I've got for this one. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hate being the YouTube shill. Like, subscribe, hit that hype button, whatever the fuck it does. Anything. Spread the love around. I really appreciate it, guys. I'm back just recently from a week-long ban, and I've had a lot of people kind of hit me up and say that they missed me while I was gone, and they appreciate my content, and I'm humbled. And I thank you guys very, very much for watching my dumb stuff. So thank you so much. That's all I've got for now, and I'll see you on the next one.